the heart of Tel Aviv, a clash of ideals and a cry for justice shook the city on Saturday as Eritrean asylum seekers faced off against police with hundreds who took to the streets in violent clashes.
لما نحن يتصانوا من مدينة شلانو بقلارة دكتاتور زي از لما هم مخفدين بوا يوم لما مشترك إسرائيل مخفدين نتم لهم يسور لا دكتاتورين زي نحن نجد زي لما أني بوا مبكش مخلات.
Violent protests erupted between hundreds of Eritrean asylum seekers and police in South Tel Aviv on Saturday during a protest against an event organized by the Eritrean embassy. The violent protests in Tel Aviv left at least 160 people injured, including 8 in serious condition. Among the injuries were nearly 50 police officers, primarily harmed by thrown projectiles. As the protests spiraled into chaos involving pro- and anti-government demonstrations, police eventually used live ammunition. Hospitals across the city reported mass casualties incidents, with dozens seeking medical treatment. The tensions had been simmering for weeks as protesters attempted to contact authorities to prevent the embassy's event. Their main claims centered on allegations of Eritrean embassy surveillance and intimidation of refugees, and the ongoing disputes with the Israeli government over refugee asylum status. Eritrea, often referred to as the North Korea of Africa, has a history of oppressive rule under its country's president. The country has been suffering from a totalitarian regime under 77-year-old president Isaias Afwerki, who has ruled Eritrea since 1993 after it gained independence from Ethiopia. There are no elections, free media, or exit visas, and many young people are indefinitely conscripted into the military. Eritrea in the Horn of Africa has one of the world's worst human rights records, and asylum seekers fear for their lives if they return.
وسلانو مماش بلغان شالم سلانو بايو نحن نجديتو نحن لغة تمشي بتسابو festival.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has conveyed a special ministerial task force to address the situation, including measures against those involved in the disruptions, potentially including deportation.
מה שקרה אתמול היה חציית קו אדום. זה התפרעות, זה שפיכות דמים, זה פרעות שאנחנו לא יכולים לקבל. ולכן הדבר הראשון שאני עושה הוא לאחל החלמה לשוטרים שנפצעו במהלך הניסיונות להחזיר את הסדר. אנחנו מבקשים צעדים חזקים נגד המתפרעים, כולל גירוש מיידי של אלה שנטלו חלק בזה.
Asylum seekers in Israel have requested police intervention to prevent the embassy's event, alleging that their pleas were ignored. Meanwhile, international protests against the Eritrean regime have spread across the globe as Eritrea celebrates 30 years of independence. The Eritrean diaspora has organized festivals in Europe and North America, drawing the ire of the regime, which has called the protesters asylum scum.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
And joining us now to dive into the bigger picture of Saturday's clashes is Public Awareness and Advocacy Coordinator at Assaf, an aid organization for refugees and asylum seekers in Israel, Oli Levinson-Sela. Oli, how come the police were surprised by the protest? I mean, despite all warnings from the Eritrean community prior to the event.
Well, it's a real puzzle to me and to all of us, because the Eritrean community and the leaders of the community have been approaching and in written referrals and orally to the police a week prior to the event, and they were warning that these clashes are about to happen. We've seen these clashes during the past month in Toronto, in Stockholm, in other cities in the world. everyone knew that this was going to be a real clash and that there is going to be violence. And the leaders of the community have urged the police not to allow this event to take place. And instead of listening to the warnings of the community itself, the police not only allowed this event to take place, it also did not make the proper preparations for the clashes, and the police was not prepared. I mean, there is no justification for using live ammunition on demonstrators.
Oli, but people question the relevance of such violent protests here in Tel Aviv. Eritrea is often referred to as the North Korea of Africa due to its totalitarian regime. How does this regime really affect the Eritrean asylum seekers, both in Israel and worldwide, those not living inside the country, inside Eritrea?
Many Eritreans have fled the country, have fled Eritrea during the years because it is known as North Korea of Africa. It holds one of the most suppressive dictatorship led by Assaf, and Eritreans have been fleeing the country, and instead of receiving asylum in the countries, in Israel, they are not acknowledged as refugees as they should have. They do not receive any rights. And on top of that, the Eritrean regime continues to haunt the refugees, the asylum seekers who have fled the country via the embassies, the Eritrean embassies around the world. Now we see that in all the countries, there are people working with the regime in the different countries. They are intimidating the asylum seekers living in that country. We've heard of threats of violence against asylum seekers who have been living here from the supporters of the regime who are also here. So people, instead of having some peace and quiet after this very hard experience that they have been through, running away from home, going through terrible experiences on the way, yes. Instead of having peace and quiet when they reach their asylum state, they are still haunted by the regime that they left.
Oli, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
A recent report regarding Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's resignation has caused backlash and extracted a response from the Likud faction. In a report published by the Agudat Israel affiliated paper Hamodia, it was published that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is prepared to resign in return for a Saudi peace deal. The report has stated that the Prime Minister is committed to making any deal with the Saudis possible, even at the price of toppling his own government. Since its release, the Prime Minister has denied all allegations that he was preparing to retire, nor to collapse his government. Netanyahu will receive the much-coveted Saudi peace deal and plea bargain for his criminal trials, all in accordance with the White House officials. According to the Hamodia report, all this will commence on the basis of Netanyahu's lack of capacity to manage Israel in its current political state. The undeniable progress in Netanyahu's efforts to achieve peace deals with Middle Eastern countries has been under attack by the report, which added that the Prime Minister's commitment to making any deal with Saudi Arabia possible will lead to the sacrificing of his government. The response to the ultra-Orthodox report comes from the Likud faction, as they stated that the report was nothing short of a far-fetched fabrication. The denial of the report continued by stating that no request or promise was made to change the current format of Netanyahu's government. Finally, the Likud statement concluded with a promise that the current government will fulfill its tenure, regardless of the Prime Minister's attempt to extend Israel's sphere of peace deals.